All right, so now that we have our two create server endpoints implemented, let's see how to actually switch over the corresponding front-end functionality to use those. Okay, so the two places that this is going to be important is inside both of our provider components. So you're going to want to open up favorites provider and friends provider. And the place that we're going to be adding in the corresponding functionality for making requests to the two endpoints we just implemented are inside the add friend function, which we changed to just display an alert, and in our favorites provider, the toggle favorite function, which we're going to have to do a little bit of logic on ourselves to make sure that the right thing is being called. So let's start off with our friends provider. This one will be a little bit easier to do. And what we're going to do is delete the logic that's inside of there and replace that with a server request. So first of all, let's change this function to an asynchronous function. And this friend argument here, if you'll remember, is the new data for the friend that we want to add. So, and you can always change that too to match what we had inside our server, right? If you take a look here, we were just expecting the new friend info to be part of the request body. So if it makes it easier for you to keep track, you can always change this name to new friend info like that. Okay, so this is going to be pretty straightforward. All we have to do is say const response equals await axios.post, okay, since this is a post request. And the URL here is going to be /friends. And the second argument here we're going to pass is the data that goes along with the post request, so the request body. And that's just going to be our new friend info. Okay, so now all we have to do, once we've gotten the response back from that server endpoint, and remember that that response is going to contain an array of all of the updated friends, what we can do is just say set friends to response.data. Okay, so that's one way to do it. And if we go and take a look, right, if we just open up our front end and go to the add new friend page and enter in, some information here, we'll say John Doe, age 34. We'll leave the profile picture URL blank there. And for bio, we'll just say likes sports, birthday. We're just testing this, so we'll just say Jan 31st. And interests, sure, food, movies, travel, etc. Okay, and if we click on create now, what should happen is our app should send a request to the server endpoint. The server endpoint will add this new friend's information into the fake in-memory database and send us back an array of all of our friends, including the new friend, and that should be updated and displayed on the friends page when our app navigates us back there. So let's click on this create button and see if that assumption is correct. Oops, it says not implemented yet. And that is because I didn't actually run the front end before we checked that. So we were just seeing an old ghost of front ends past. So let's try that again. We're going to say npm run start, make absolutely sure that this is the correct data. And it is now because we see that Eva Hayes is now in our favorites. That's from when we were testing our endpoints with Postman. And we see that John Doe is there as well. So if you want to refresh your server and start with clean data, which I would recommend here, what you can do is just go into your server.js, kill it manually, and restart it. Okay, so we'll say clear, restart it with npm run dev, and we'll see that our server will be reset back to normal. Okay, so all of our data starts over from the beginning. All right, so let's try adding our new friend again. We're going to add John Doe. We're going to do the same information as before. Likes sports, January 31st, and food, movies, travel. Sure. All right, so let's click on create again. And we should see that John Doe is now there. And if we refresh our application, John Doe is still there. Okay? And one thing to notice too is that this data is on the server now, right? It's not being loaded from local storage like it was before. Cool, so creating friends works. The next thing we're going to convert over is adding people to our favorites. Okay, so essentially when we click on this button now, it says not implemented yet. So we're going to need to go into our favorites provider and make that change here as well. All right, so we are actually going to reuse part of this logic in our toggle favorite function because essentially we'll want to make a different request depending on whether that person is already a favorite or not, right? If they're already a favorite, we're going to want to remove them from our favorites. And if they're not already a favorite, we're going to want to add them to our favorites. So what that's going to look like is we're just going to test if our favorite IDs includes that person ID we're trying to add. So what we'll do, we'll say if favorite IDs.includes person ID. In that case, we'll want to remove them from our favorites. So we'll just say alert not implemented yet because we haven't implemented that server route yet. So we'll say not implemented yet. Otherwise, what we're going to do is make a server request. So we'll say else. And inside here, we'll say const response equals await axios.post. We're going to send a request to /favorites, and the body here is going to be the friend ID that we want to add to our favorites, okay? And you can either say friend ID, person ID, or you can just change the name of this to friend ID inside toggle favorite. Okay, so friend ID, just like that, and that should work. We do need to change this function to async now as well. And what we're going to do once we get that response back is we're just going to set our favorite IDs up here to the favorite IDs that we get back from the server. So we'll say set favorite IDs to response.data. Okay, and we'll delete that as well. And that should work now. So let's try adding people to our favorites with the full knowledge that we won't actually be able to remove them from our favorites once they're there for the time being. Okay, so let's head back to our front end. Oh, person ID is not defined. We need to change this to friend ID. Okay, let's go back and try adding one of these people to our favorites. And sure enough, it works, right? So we're able to add people to our favorites. And once we get there and click remove favorites, we get not implemented yet, which is more or less what we wanted to happen. Okay, so let's click on OK. And that does it for integrating create functionality on the server into our application. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.